She was a virgin assistant until the millionaire boss tore her skirt and thus stirred her heart. Autumn in New York always carries something inexplicable. A touch of cold wind, a rush of people, and a whisper of hope, sometimes only noticeable when you're on the verge of giving up. For Emily Carter, that morning was nothing more than a job interview. A last shot after 2 long months of unemployment. Months filled with unanswered emails, silent rejections, and a bank account that looked more like a countdown. She picked her charcoal pencil skirt, the only respectable piece left for a formal interview. Her hair tied back tightly, a few rebellious strands refusing the image of professional woman she tried so hard to maintain. The Finnvance headquarters towered over Midtown like it ruled the skyline. Stepping into the marble-floored lobby, Emily already felt 2 inches tall. "Ms. Carter, right this way," a poised blonde woman greeted her. Madison, senior executive assistant to the CEO. Madison led her to the 32nd floor and seated her in a sleek glass-walled waiting room with a stunning view of the city. Emily clasped her hands and took a deep breath, fighting the rising nerves. Then the door opened. A man entered, tall, clean-cut, sharp suit, white shirt crisp as new snow, gray tie holding 2 cups of coffee. Nathan Blake. She recognized him immediately. His face had graced 100 financial magazines. Fintech prodigy, youngest CEO in Fortune's 40 Under 40, the man who never smiles. "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were already here," he said, startled. He moved quickly toward her, then his foot caught the carpet. Coffee tilted and then, rip, the sound of fabric tearing. 1 cup dropped, splashing on the floor. Emily's skirt, right along the side, ripped clean open. Silence. 1 terrible second. Emily looked down, then at Nathan. "Oh no, I'm really sorry," he stammered, eyes wide with panic. Instead of freaking out, Emily laughed. A small laugh at first, then louder, breaking the awkward tension like sunlight through fog. "Well, at least you didn't spill it on me. Skirts can be replaced." Nathan blinked. Then something rare happened. He smiled, faintly but sincerely. "Wait here," he said, removing his suit jacket. "Here, use this for now." Emily took it, draped it over herself, trying to stay composed. "I'm Nathan Blake. Emily Carter, interview candidate." "Well then, I suppose we should just start now." The interview happened right there. No conference table, no presentation slides, no HR rep, just 2 people, a torn skirt, and a strangely honest conversation. Nathan asked little, mostly listened. Emily spoke plainly. She explained why she left her last job and why she wanted to work at Finnvance. "I believe in transparency, and I want to work somewhere that doesn't see that as naive." Nathan paused. "Not many people say that to my face." At the end, he stood and offered his hand. "I'm impressed, not because of your resume, but because of how you handled the unexpected." Emily left the building with a strange feeling, not quite hopeful, but no longer hopeless. There was something in Nathan's eyes. This wasn't over, not even close. 3 days after that bizarre interview, a brief email landed in Emily's inbox. "We've decided to offer you a position at Finnvance. Your first day will be Monday." No bold subject line, no congratulations, just that. But to Emily, it felt like a door cracking open at the end of a long, dim hallway. She glanced at the skirt she had carefully stitched back together, a silent reminder that some accidents might actually be the beginning of something unexpected. She entered Finnvance carrying no grand expectations, just herself, and a quiet resolve not easily broken. Emily's first day at Finnvance began with cold coffee and silence. There was no welcome bouquet, no office tea party, just an email from Madison outlining a strict daily schedule, several documents to review, and 1 dry sentence. "Good luck not getting fired in your first week." Emily smirked. She'd worked in high-pressure environments before, but this place felt different. Everything ran like a perfectly timed machine, no room for error. Her desk sat just 2 glass doors away from the CEO's office. Nathan rarely left it. He barely spoke unless necessary, and when he did, it was brief and to the point. Her first task? Reschedule a round of meetings with the Japanese partners. after the previous assistant quit without notice. Emily stayed up most of the night learning the company's intricate internal system. By Tuesday morning, a mistake hit. Madison had accidentally sent the wrong draft translation. Japanese copies had already been printed, but the phrase conditional transfer had been translated as unconditional transfer. Emily caught it just as Nathan was walking out for the meeting. "Mr. Blake, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I believe there's a serious mistranslation in the Japanese documents. The term for conditional transfer was rendered incorrectly." Nathan stopped. His eyes narrowed. "Are you sure?" She held up the document, marked and corrected by hand. "Very sure." He looked at her, for a few seconds longer than usual, then nodded. "Scrap all the old copies. Use your version. Thank you." Just 5 words. But to Emily, it felt like a breakthrough. That afternoon, she received an email from Madison. "Careful, no one's heard him say thank you since 2019. Emily slowly adjusted to the pace, eventually learning to anticipate what Nathan needed just by how he glanced or how he set a file on her desk. They didn't speak much, but the pauses between them always seemed to hold something weightier. Once she dropped a stack of papers in the hallway. Nathan, passing by, bent down and helped her pick them up, then said quietly, "Not everyone picks up what's been dropped, but people with responsibility do." It wasn't clear if the comment was about papers or something more. From that day on, Emily started to believe that behind that composed, unreadable exterior was a man who still believed in decency. And maybe, just maybe, something beyond that too. 6 weeks had passed since Emily started working at Finnvance. Everything had settled into a strangely smooth rhythm. She adapted to the relentless pace, the emails that never stopped, the endless charts and reports, and the way Nathan Blake walked past people without ever looking back. But then, something small happened. Something Emily would later realize was the first falling domino. That evening, she stayed late to finalize the Asia market report. While leaving the print room on the 31st floor, she heard familiar voices drifting from a nearby conference room, the lights still on inside. It was Trevor Reed, the COO and Nathan's closest friend, and a woman's voice. Low, confident, cold. Emily paused, pressing herself against the frosted glass wall. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but a few words slipped clearly through the cracked door. "Once I get Nathan's signature, the rest is mine." "You sure? We can't afford a single mistake. I know how to get him to lower his guard, just like before." That voice, unmistakable. Vanessa, Nathan's ex-wife, the one who turned his wedding day into a wound he never spoke of. Emily froze. Her heart pounded. Every instinct told her to leave, but her feet wouldn't move. The next morning, Vanessa appeared at the office. Flawless hair, elegant dress, a smile as bright as it was fake. "Ms. Carter, I hear you're Nathan's new assistant. Finnvance is really hiring younger and younger these days, isn't it?" Emily forced a polite smile, hiding the ice behind her eyes. She started digging. Emily spent several nights researching a company called Eon Digital Capital, the firm allegedly negotiating to buy shares of Finnvance. On the surface, it looked legitimate, but the deeper she went, the more things felt off. The company was a shell, fronting for an investment group under investigation for money laundering. Then by chance, she spotted a draft contract on Madison's desk. Internal share transfer agreement. Trevor's signature was already printed. Only Nathan's was missing. One late night, alone in the office, Emily slipped into the same conference room from before. She reached into her purse and carefully placed a small voice recorder beneath the table. She sat in the dark, heart pounding like a drum. 2 days later, Trevor invited her to meet downstairs at the cafe. "Emily, you're smart. Don't let yourself get pulled into something that isn't your concern." She tilted her head. "I don't know what you're talking about." He smiled, a smooth, calculated grin that chilled her. "We could, come to an arrangement. A little bonus, a nice apartment in Soho, or maybe a less demanding job. Somewhere far away." Emily looked straight into his eyes. "Are you trying to bribe me?" "No, I'm giving you a chance to walk away before things get out of hand." She stood up, voice steady. "I don't stand aside when I see wrong being done, and I won't stay silent while someone I trust is being betrayed." That night, Emily went home, opened her laptop, put in her earbuds, and listened to the recording. Clear, precise, enough to burn down everything Trevor was trying to build behind Nathan's back. She stared out the window. New York glittered beneath her. But inside her, it was not peace. She knew, from this moment on, there was no turning back. She thought of Nathan's rare smile, the way he trusted her, without ever saying the words. Could she break that? Could she risk becoming part of the hurt he'd known before? But truth didn't wait for perfect timing, and justice rarely came without cost. The audio file sat in her drive like a ticking bomb. Every time she thought of Trevor's face, Vanessa's voice, or Nathan's unusual silence all week, a knot tightened in her throat. Maybe it was time to know more, not just about the plot, but about the man behind the glass office door, Nathan Blake. That evening, the office stayed open later than usual. The intermarket investment project had reached its final audit phase, and the 32nd floor still glowed with fluorescent lights close to 9 p.m. Emily was at her desk, typing the final lines of her East Asia analysis report, when Nathan suddenly appeared at her door. "You're still here?" She looked up, slightly startled. Nathan didn't usually initiate conversation, especially after hours. "Just finishing the East Asia report," she replied. "What about you?" He glanced at her screen, then gave a faint smile. "Coffee?" She nodded, no questions asked. The cafe sat just around the corner behind the Finnvance building. The New York night air was cool, damp from earlier rain, and oddly refreshing. They chose a table under a canopy outside, where amber light spilled over wet leaves. Nathan had taken off his blazer, his white shirt sleeves rolled up. For the first time, Emily saw him slightly undone, and strangely, it made him more human. "You know," Nathan said after his first sip of espresso, "some days I forget why I even started." "Started what?" Emily asked. "This job, this company, that whole financial freedom for everyone mission I used to rant about after college." She said nothing, letting the silence do the listening. He stared at his cup before continuing, voice lower. "Vanessa used to say I lived in a fortress, that I didn't build Finnvance to help people, but to fill something empty inside me." Emily didn't speak right away. "Maybe she wasn't entirely wrong," he added quietly. She inhaled. "They called me too rigid at my last job. I found manipulated data in our reports. Reported it. Spent 3 weeks getting iced out before I finally quit. Because of your conscience? Because I still have to look in the mirror every morning." They looked at each other. No smiles. Just understanding. Around 11 o'clock at night, they returned to the office. It was eerily quiet, just soft lighting and the hum of the HVAC system. Nathan led Emily upstairs to the top floor meeting room, the one with glass walls and a panoramic view of the New York skyline. She hesitated for a moment, then followed. The city below looked like a sea of light. Distant sirens echoed faintly like background music for those not ready to sleep yet. "I've never seen New York look this beautiful," Emily said softly. Nathan stood beside her, silent. Then almost inaudibly, he spoke. "Emily." She turned toward him. He paused, realizing what he had said. "Sorry, I'm used to calling you Carter." She shook her head. "It's okay." But her heartbeat quickened. For the first time after weeks of formal interaction, carefully drawn boundaries, her name from his lips sounded gentle and personal. She turned back to the skyline, eyes fixed on the lights, but her thoughts spinning. "I think I'm starting to like someone I shouldn't like," she thought. That night when Emily returned to her small apartment, she didn't turn the lights on. She sat down still wearing her coat, streetlight bleeding through the curtain, casting a blurry stripe across the floor. Her mind kept replaying the evening. Coffee, personal stories, the way he looked at her when he said Emily. But beneath the emotions was a truth she couldn't ignore. The recording. The evidence was in her hands. And it could end everything. Not just Trevor's scheme, but maybe also the fragile stillness she and Nathan had just started to find. Emily knew one thing. She couldn't stay silent any longer. The truth had to come out, and she would be the one to bring it, whatever it might cost her. Emily never imagined she'd sit across from Trevor Reed at an upscale bar, playing the part of someone uninvolved. You know, Trevor said with a carefully friendly smile, not everyone can handle the pressure at Finnvance, but you're different. She raised her wine glass with a slight smile. Beneath her coat, a tiny recorder was hidden deep in her inner pocket. This meeting, suggested by Vanessa, had become Emily's opportunity to capture Trevor's confession. Why me? She asked, tilting her head. Because you're smart, and because you're close to the one person whose signature still matters. Trevor sipped his drink. We both know Nathan's exhausted. All he needs is a little nudge. A nudge where? She asked evenly. Right where it hurts most. His trust. Leaving the bar, Emily walked slowly down the dim street, clutching the phone that now stored the recording. In it, Trevor clearly described receiving funds from Eon Digital, falsifying financial reports to mislead shareholders into thinking Finnvance was sinking, forcing Nathan to restructure and sell, and worst of all, he named Vanessa as the one who opens the final door. The next morning, Trevor appeared in Emily's office unannounced. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. His face no longer carried a smile. You're playing a dangerous game. I don't know what you mean, Emily said, eyes on her screen. Don't play dumb. You think I don't know? Trevor stepped closer, placing an envelope on her desk. 1 million, wired today. In exchange, you delete everything. Walk away from Finnvance. Emily looked at the envelope, then straight into his eyes. Her voice was cold, sharp. I don't sell my soul for money. Trevor clenched his jaw. You'll regret this. No, she stood. You should start worrying. That afternoon, Nathan called an emergency board meeting. No prior notice, no agenda. The 40th floor conference room was packed. Major shareholders, key investors, and the executive team. Trevor sat in his usual VP seat as if nothing had happened. Nathan entered, calm and unreadable. Emily stood behind him, her gaze fixed on Trevor. We're here to address something critical, Nathan began, about trust and the truth. He nodded at Emily. She stepped forward and inserted a USB into the projector. Audio filled the room, the bar conversation between Trevor and Emily playing loud and clear. No one spoke. Then Trevor's voice rang out on the recording. Once I get the signature, I'll handle the rest. Nathan won't see it coming. You and I will own the board. Trevor's face went pale. He stood abruptly. This is illegal. This is private. Nathan stepped forward. Calm, precise. This recording was made during a business discussion, and if you'd like, I can provide a copy to our legal team. Silence. Mr. Hargrove, a major investor, slammed his palm on the table. I put 20 million into Finnvance, and this is how you repay us? Another shareholder shouted, Trevor Reed, you're to step down from all roles, effective immediately. Applause followed, first a few, then the entire room. Trevor had no place left to hide. He lowered his head and walked out, passing judgment in every pair of eyes that followed him. When only a few remained, Nathan turned to Emily. In the fading afternoon light streaming through the glass walls, he looked at her for a long moment, then spoke slowly, with quiet gratitude. You didn't just save this company, you saved me. Emily didn't reply. She only met his gaze, with eyes no longer just those of an assistant. After the meeting, the office slowly emptied. Emily stood alone by the high-rise window, watching the city shift from afternoon to evening. She could hear chairs being moved in the conference room behind her, footsteps fading, then silence, just her, and the quiet thought echoing in her head. I did the right thing. So why is my heart still shaking? Behind her, the door opened. Nathan stepped in. No more tense words, no guarded expressions, just two people, standing in the glow of a fading skyline, now that every lie had been stripped away, and what remained was not truth on paper, but the truth inside. The sky outside had faded into a soft lavender hue. The city below twinkled with thousands of lights. On the high floor of Finnvance's office, Emily and Nathan sat across from each other. No more boardroom tables, no documents, no interruptions. Just them and the delicate silence between two beating hearts. Nathan leaned forward slightly, eyes steady. You know, He began, his voice as gentle as the dusk settling outside. "I've never trusted anyone the way I trust you." Emily smiled faintly, but doubt lingered in her eyes. "You're the CEO of Finnvance. You've worked with people far more impressive than me." "Maybe," Nathan nodded, "but no one's ever made me drop my guard. No one's ever made me want to share things I didn't need to." She lowered her gaze, fingers twining nervously. "We're boss and employee. You know that. What will the world think if—" "Emily," he cut in, soft but firm. "I don't care what the world thinks. I care if you love me." Emily looked up, meeting his gaze fully. No shields, no hesitation. "Yes," she said, "I love you. Even though I know I shouldn't, but the heart doesn't wait for permission." Nathan exhaled slowly, like releasing something he'd been holding far too long. He stood, walked to the cabinet behind his desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a small velvet box. It wasn't flashy or ornate, but inside was a ring, simple, elegant, and enough to stir something deep. "I've had this for a while," Nathan said, stepping back toward her. "At first I wasn't sure who it was for, but now I am." Emily raised a hand to her lips, eyes shimmering, not with surprise, but with quiet certainty. Nathan knelt and took her hand. "Not because you saved me today, not because you made me believe in people again, but because I don't want to live another day without you beside me. Not because you saved me today, not because you made me believe in people again, but because I don't want to live another day without you beside me." He nodded, then slid the ring onto her finger. Then they embraced, not too tightly, not in haste, just enough to know they were where they belonged. Outside, New York lights continued to flicker, but in that high-floor office, they had found a different kind of light, one that didn't come from the city, but from within their hearts. They didn't say much after that, just sat together, letting the silence wrap around them like a blanket. Somewhere between the rhythm of the city and the sound of their hearts, a new beginning quietly took root. That night, after leaving the office, Emily gently touched the new ring on her finger. She stood quietly by her apartment window, gazing down at the city still glittering below. Just like the night she first arrived here, holding a resume, wearing slightly worn-out shoes and a skirt that tore during her very first interview. Who would have thought that little tear, what once felt like misfortune, would open the door to love, trust, and an entirely new life? In that moment, Emily smiled to herself. Life sure knows how to play tricks, but if it means bringing you to me, then I'd gladly let that skirt tear all over again. Finnvance's new headquarters opened that fall, a 45-story glass tower in the heart of Manhattan, with a rooftop terrace that looked straight out to the Hudson River. The top floor was where major strategic meetings now took place, and also the room where, 1 year ago, Emily Carter walked in with a torn skirt and hesitant eyes. Today, the room wore a completely different look. No projector, no spreadsheets, just a full-length mirror, a bouquet of white flowers, and a beautiful wedding dress waiting to be worn. Emily stood before the mirror, dressed in that gown. She was no longer the girl sitting nervously outside the interview room. She was now Chief Strategy Officer at Finnvance, one of the youngest women to ever hold the title. And today, she was also the CEO's bride. Soft music drifted in from the rooftop above. Madison pushed open the door. She wore a sharp gray suit, still composed, still brief with words. But the look in her eyes was gentler than usual. "He's waiting upstairs," she said, "and I've never seen him this nervous." Emily smiled. "And you? Did you ever think I'd be here?" Madison walked closer, adjusting the veil at her back. "I always knew he'd choose you. From the first moment you walked into that meeting room, even with a torn skirt and no proper introduction." They both laughed, a soft sound like autumn wind brushing past the glass window. The wedding unfolded under a golden sunset. The rooftop was filled with white flowers, candlelight, and warm string lights. Nathan stood at the altar. When Emily stepped through the glass doors, bouquet in hand, every eye turned toward her, the woman who had gone from applicant to executive, and now walked toward the man she loved. As she reached him, Nathan took her hand, his grip just slightly trembling. The officiant smiled and invited him to speak his vows. Nathan took a breath, eyes never leaving Emily. "The day I met you, I tore your skirt," he began, voice steady but soft. "Back then, I didn't realize what I had ruined, but it turns out I had opened the door to something much better." He paused. "Today, I don't want to fix anything. I want to give you everything that's whole in me. My heart, my trust, and my future." Emily's eyes shimmered. Her fingers tightened around his. Nathan leaned down, whispered in her ear, "Just for the two of them. A year ago, I tore her skirt. Today, I give her my whole life." As their kiss ended, the terrace erupted in applause. And in the city that never sleeps, one love had finally awakened. The wedding ended just before midnight. The city below still glowed brightly, but Finnvance's rooftop had slowly dimmed, leaving only a few flickering candles, like they too were reluctant to let go of something beautiful. Emily stood by the railing, her hand still holding her bouquet. The long veil drifted slightly in the wind, catching on a nearby flower pot, and this time she let it. Not everything that drifts away needs to be pulled back, she thought. Nathan approached with 2 glasses of wine, golden under the terrace lights. He handed her one and clinked it gently. "My wife loves city views," he said with a smile. Emily leaned into his shoulder. "And my husband enjoys surprising me. A rooftop wedding, a ring tucked away in a drawer. How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day you turned down Trevor's bribe," he said thoughtfully. "You have no idea how strong you looked in that moment." "I was just doing what was right," she murmured. "Though sometimes doing the right thing feels like the loneliest path." Nathan gently squeezed her hand. "Not anymore. Right or wrong, you have me now." Their honeymoon took place in a quiet cabin by a lake in Vermont. Just pine trees, still water, and a world without emails, meetings, or investor calls. In the mornings, they made breakfast together. At noon, they read in silence or just laid side by side, listening to the breeze rustle the leaves. In the evenings, Nathan lit a fire. Emily sat on the wooden steps, wrapped in a thick blanket, listening to him share stories about early business trips, failed deals, and the emptiness he felt before he met her. Emily shared too, about divorced parents, silent dinners, and how rules and principles were the only things that helped her feel like she was standing upright. "You know," she said one night, "there were times I was afraid to love you. I didn't know if love would make me weak." Nathan looked up. "And now?" "Now I know love doesn't make you weak." She smiled softly, eyes moist. "It just makes you brave enough to soften, brave enough to trust, brave enough to lean on someone. And maybe that's the hardest thing of all." Back in New York, Emily returned to work with a renewed sense of clarity. She was no longer the CEO's assistant, nor just Nathan Blake's wife. She was herself, chief strategy officer of a company in full resurgence, and a woman who had stepped through one life and into another. But what brought her the most joy wasn't the title. It was the little things. Nathan's coffee every morning, his handwritten notes when he got home late, the way he left her desk lamp on when he knew she'd work late. One late autumn evening, while cleaning out an old cabinet, Emily found a small wooden box tucked deep inside. Inside it, folded neatly, was the skirt she had once torn during her first interview. "You kept this?" she asked, surprised. Nathan shrugged. "It's where it all began." She laughed and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "Let's keep it forever," she whispered. "Even when we have kids, even when we're gray. I want to remember. You once tore my skirt." Nathan turned, kissed her forehead. "And you restitched my life." But life wasn't always candles and quiet whispers. There were arguments about expansion plans, time management, and whether they should adopt a dog or a cat. During those moments, Emily usually retreated to the kitchen. Nathan took the balcony. Silence. A beat. Then always, one of them returned. Always, one of them spoke first. Because they both knew, love isn't about being right. It's about returning, even after being wrong. 1 year after their wedding, they launched a scholarship fund called the Carter Initiative, aimed at supporting business students from underprivileged backgrounds who chose integrity over convenience. At the launch event, Emily gave a short speech. "We believe honesty isn't just a virtue, it's a value worth rewarding. I was once a girl who lost a job for speaking the truth. If I had given up then, I wouldn't be standing here today. In the audience, Nathan watched her in silence. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Everyone could see the pride in his eyes. That night, back at their apartment, Emily sat on the floor, unwrapping gifts. Suddenly, she turned to him. Nathan, yeah? What if one day I'm no longer an executive? No longer working in finance? Not even the confident woman I am today? He looked up serious. You'd still be Emily, the one I love, the one I choose every day. She smiled. I just needed to be sure. He walked over, took her hand. Not because of who you are on paper, but because of who you are when no one's looking. That's always been enough. Outside the balcony, the city hadn't slept. But inside that small apartment, two people had learned how to love the way they once learned how to stand. They had stumbled. They had paused. But they had always returned to each other. That they now knew was love.